Okay, so for my video, I have decided to go ahead and focus on the foraging and feeding methods of mallard ducks. While I was doing my observations, I noticed that the ducks put themselves in a very vulnerable state by submerging their entire heads and necks under the water to reach their food. So I decided to look into this for my research. In terms of the causation level of analysis, I decided to think about maybe the fact that they have a need for deeper feeding because of the environment that they're in. You know, it's a public city lake, the food conditions can't be that prime, so poor water quality could lead to poor food quality. So through the article Foraging Methods Can Affect Patch Choice, an experimental study in mallard, their research showed that a reduction of food density in shallower patches did in fact lead the mallards to turning to deeper foraging, and this in turn supported the hypothesis that food depletion was responsible for a switch from shallow to deep foraging, which was observed in dabbling ducks. From a developmental standpoint, I decided to look into the fact that since there were other species of ducks at the lake, perhaps when mallards are around other species, they, rather than feeding from the surface, since there's competition, they could learn to reach food further down underwater. This was supported through the article Foraging Niche Shifts in Multi-Species Dabbling Duck Feeding Groups, Harmful and Beneficial Interactions Between the Species. This research showed that when mallards were in the presence of other species, they tended to switch to the opposite feeding method from whatever the different species was using. If they were using shallow, the mallards would switch to deeper feeding methods. This just allows them to learn to reach a different food level from whatever competition is around them. From an evolutionary standpoint, due to this need to become deep feeders, it would definitely be necessary for them to have a much quicker food intake rate since they're putting themselves in such risk. They need to have a much shorter time spent underwater, and this allows them to be much more aware of their surroundings if they have more what they call head-up vigilance, which is pretty much the ducks. Shorter time underwater, bring the head back up, scan around, being more aware, go back down to feed. This was supported through switching to a feeding method that obstructs vision, increases head-up vigilance in dabbling ducks, and it provided further evidence that switching, again, to a feeding method which precludes predator detection did lead the ducks to having increased head-up vigilance, being more aware of their surroundings, being more aware of predator risk. In terms of a functional use, a lot of the research that I found was done during the summer months, and since we are in the middle of summer ourselves, seemed to fit perfectly. A lot of the better food sources for the mallards seemed to be found further underwater, and so they allowed themselves this risk of vulnerability to reach their food. And this was supported through seasonal and dial changes in the feeding behavior of some dabbling duck species on a breeding lake in northern Sweden.